The West Tigers podcast has organised another coach trip, this time to Newcastle, to see the West Tigers take on the Knights on August 11. It's a Sunday game at 4:05. We leave from Campbelltown Stadium in Lumia, pick up at Concord at the Centre of Excellence, make our way north, stop for lunch along the way, and then head to McDonald Jones Stadium to see the Tigers in action. Bookings are now being taken. Just head to westtigerspodcast.com.au and click on Do Game Day Coach Transfer. All the details, the itinerary is there, and you can put your details through and we'll get you on the bus. Hope to see you for our big coach trip to Newcastle. It'll be a lot of fun on August 11. Don't delay. There are only a limited number of tickets. It's the West Tigers podcast, episode number 334, and unfortunately another post-loss edition of the podcast, recording on Monday night, Holiday Monday, after the Tigers lost Friday night. Seems like ages ago, 56 points to 14 to the St George Illawarra Dragons after leading 14-12 at half-time. Let's go with tradition, and that is one word, and all of the one-word contributions, which every week seem to be stacking up more and more, which is great. All from the West Tigers podcast forum this week. If you haven't joined up for the forum, make sure you do it. westtigerspodcast.com.au and click on to forum. Skipper 13. Skipper 13's one word for the Tigers v Dragons game. Exhausting. Here, Skipper 13, I agree. Mike, errors. They killed us. The Last Ronin used 4 words. Bring back the Bears. He says it would at least make my dad happy. But the thing is, The Last Ronin, if you were around when the Bears were in the competition, the Bears for decades made nobody happy. So I don't know about that. Dirty Reds, angry. Haven't been this angry in years. Snake, one word can't describe the garbage that's dished up. Tiger 5150, inevitable. Was only a matter of time before the dam broke. So in other words, what we've been talking a little bit about on the podcast is how long can you sustain some of those competitive performances that we've been putting in the last couple of months. Tigersman, unacceptable. And that was a word that Benji used in the press conference. Canberra Tiger, losers. Canberra Tiger saying losing is ingrained in this club. Logan R21, aptitude or lack thereof throughout the organisation. Natmac 78, 9. The Tigers have used up their 9 lives. Lorenzo, defence. It was woeful. Plunder Monkeys, one word. Well, there are actually 2. Overwhelmed and outgunned. Oh, and also outclassed. So 3 words from Plunder Monkey. Tiger Symmetry, manhandled. That's a good one. Matt V. Tiger, unprofessional. Matt V. Tiger saying the stupidity of some of the decisions made by our players boggles my mind. Yep, I know what you feel. Rust Huddy 63, control. We don't have halves that can control the situation. Good points. Tiger, lower Tiger, inevitable. A loss like this was coming. Peter A, masochism. The pain gives me pleasure. So there you go, Peter A. Chook's one word was sin bin. It flipped the whole game on its head. And Rach09, dejected. My faith is really being tested, said Rach09. And I think most of us feel somewhat the same. Gary Watson, hello. Your one word, please, for that Dragons game.
It's 3 words. Well, it's 2 words and some letters, but not NRL standard. I don't think that performance was... Not only was it not NRL standard, it wasn't New South Wales Cup standard. It wasn't... I'd be disappointed if I went down to my local football field and saw what was dished up on display in that second half. It just wasn't good enough for a professional, elite-level football team to go into halftime leading a game 14-12 or whatever that score was at halftime, and then come out and complete 3 or 4 sets of 6 and 220 metres. It's just not good enough, and the club needs to fix it.
Eddie, how you doing? What's your one word, please?
Yeah, good, thanks, Joel. I had a couple of different ones. I had men against boys, because that's what it looked like in the second half. Just physically, it actually looked like adults playing against kids. You don't see that often in the NRL, but I sort of agree with the couple of people who went with inevitable. I had coming, as in it was coming. I predicted this against the Cowboys. It didn't eventuate that night, but that lineup we put out on Tuesday, like realistically, it was half the State Cup side, and that doesn't excuse some of the non-efforts in the second half, but that sort of loss was coming.
Well, and you're talking about the side that was put out on Tuesday. The one that gets put out tomorrow, it's going to be a worse-looking team than the one put out last week. Like, Galvin's not looking like not playing. Sullivan's not playing. We do get Caesar back, but what's going to be put out on the field next weekend isn't going to be, or it's going to be worse than what it was on Friday night.
Yeah, we have a bit of a talk about that. There's some rumours about some possible positions that are being selected there for that game. I'll let everybody in on a little tip on how I sort of do the game. So I've got an A4 pad, and I always write up the top the episode number because I know we're going to record, and I put the scores there, like the halftime, full time, and I write my one word at the top of the page. And I'd actually already written my one word before the game started because I thought, I guarantee you this is going to be my one word. And would anybody like to have a guess as to what my one word is?
I'm thinking something you used before on one of your favourite sayings, but I can't think of the top of my head. I'll go with hopeless, Joel.
Hopeless. Physicality. Every week it's pretty much...
It is one of your sayings.
Yeah, it's, if you look at the Dragons, and I remember that Campbelltown game where I was out there and you could see the body shape difference and the size difference, and we just couldn't match them physically. And until we can get an NRL, a side that can match the other NRL teams in terms of physicality, then I think we're going to struggle, Gary.
The one thing I do want to point out is that, and I know we can't really look at positives, and it's not really a positive, but that first 15 minutes, I thought we did match them physically. I thought that was the best attacking football we've played in a number of years. I thought Matamua playing in that 13 role was doing a really good job, and it was opening up our halves and opening up the backs. That 15 minutes was great, but as soon as we made a couple of errors and St. George started to play with those big outside big edge plays, the big second rowers and the big centres that they have, we weren't able to match them. And we hung on for most of that first half with them running hard and straight and really damaging our defensive line. But that disappeared completely in the second half. And I guess when you're underpowered and undersized like we were compared to the Dragons on the weekend, you can only hold that out for a while. And when the floodgates opened, boy, did they open.
Yeah, I've got in my notes that I was really impressed. I thought probably that first 15 minutes was as good as we've played all season. It was. I thought, okay, maybe, just maybe. But when the Dragons clicked, but my other word is depressing. I don't remember a weekend as a West Tigers fan that was as depressing. I mean, I know that when I think about games that have hurt as a West Tigers fan, I think about that final that we lost against the Warriors where they scored in the last few minutes, like that. I can still feel the pain from that game. But in terms of the whole weekend and how it unfolded, it was just a real low point. Depressing is the word, because it wasn't just the loss. It was all of the stuff that came out in the newspapers and on the socials in the hours and the couple of days after the Dragons game, including Lachlan Galvin. Now, there's been a little bit of an update on the Lachlan Galvin situation. I think it's probably the most pressing thing for us to discuss. And by the sound of it, and no great surprise, Eddie, Shane Richardson would be digging his heels in here. I don't see him as being somebody that will easily, let Galvin go just because, there's some talk about him being unhappy or things like that. I think he's a man that will see things through to the end and expect others to.
Not 100%. And I see, and can be irrational at times, Joel, as you know, but I read a lot of comments from Tigers fans on forums saying, 18-year-old, his head's too big, get him, just let him go. Like, no. Like, you just look at this situation, you can see what's happening. Look at his manager, Isaac Moses. I'm sure his parents have got something to do with it. He's come just out of schoolboy football. He probably hasn't lost more than 2 or 3 games in a row in his life. And now he's lost 9 games in a row. So that is a shock to the system for an 18-year-old kid. And no, just look at what happened with Ben Hunt. And that was a senior experienced pro who went to the media and said, I'm leaving. And Shane Flanagan said, hold on. No, you're not. you're not leaving. And that's exactly what will happen with Lachlan Galvin. Shane Richardson is not going to roll over. I expected him to be strong. He came out and was strong. And obviously, they're going to have some ups and downs with an 18-year-old kid, but you've got to back yourself as a club to change his mind and turn things around, because I'm sure he's being influenced by older people at the moment. And you just can't roll over, because if you did that for him, it just sets a precedent for the whole club.
Yeah, just before we went there, I know Eddie watched it as well. The Chalmers and Richardson interview was on Channel 9. I had a look at that. The key thing that came out of that for me was the talk that Moses and Galvin's camp want an upgrade on his contract, and they want that upgrade now, and they want it without extending the contract. And Shane Richardson has basically said to them, we will give you that upgrade, but we want to extend you into future years. And I think that's probably where the sticking point is right now. And I really do hope that asking for a release is part of their negotiation tactics of getting what they want. But the situation we're in, we should definitely be looking to upgrade him, but that upgrade has to come with an extension. There has to be something in it for the club to be paying him extra this year and next year. He's on $250,000 this year, which he's playing well above that value. And when you have a look at, we've got guys like Latu Fainu, and we've got Jaden Sullivan, who he's contributed a lot more to the side this year than either of those two, and they're both on around $500,000 a year. So I can understand there being a push from his camp for an upgrade of that contract, but with that, there needs to be an extension as well. So I think Richardson's playing that exactly right. Give him that upgrade, but it has to come with an extension.
No, I mean, this is nothing new, Joel. This went on in the summer. I saw an article back in February where Isaac Moses had asked for 3 releases throughout the summer for Lachie Galvin before he set foot on the field, because of, obviously, they felt like his pathway could be blocked at the Tigers. I'm sure that was part of the reason. Maybe they had concerns about coaching or something. We don't know. But it's a pretty easy card for him to play at the moment, because he'd be looking at it and going, well, and you, Gary, you said $250K this year. I don't know if he is on that much this year. I thought it was less.
It may be
more next year.
It may have been moving into $250K next year. And it was
Chavez
more closer to
minimum wage.
Yeah, you're right. He did
$150K this year, but like Isaac Moses, whatever you think of him, he'd be going, well, hang on, my client is played, arguably been our top 3 players all year. You got Sullivan, who's been hopeless, not hopeless, but average, and he's on double or triple, and you got Fainu, who's barely set foot on the field. So, what's going on here? So I can see that situation that Gary's talking about. It's probably just a Mexican standoff where they want the upgrade immediately, and Richardson's digging his heels on and saying, well, that's fine, but you need to extend, and I can understand that. And they're maybe going to have to thrash it out.
Is it that we are ultra sensitive as West Tigers fans because we've been here and done it before? Like, we're kind of expecting the bad news, aren't we? We're expecting someone to put the knife us in the back and take an offer from a more glamorous club. And do you think that sort of sometimes tints out the way that we look at things because we're so super sensitive to being abandoned by a young player like this, Gary? Like, a lot of other clubs would have gone, well, you've got a contract and we'll negotiate and we'll bring that calm head in. But our fan base, all of us, were instantly sort of triggered by these reports. And Galvin, as much as we all can see the potential there, I mean, he hasn't done anything yet in his career. Like, is it a little bit that we're a little too trigger happy as fans?
100%, but you got to just have a look at our recent history. Like, there's a number of things that adds to us as a fan base being overly sensitive to probably do these sort of things. You have a look, we haven't made the semi-finals in 12 years. And then we had some generational talent come through who have gone on to play State of Origin and captain New South Wales. And we brought those guys through, and then they left the club. And then our past administration, pretty much as soon as a player said they were unhappy, within days, they were walking out the door, and that happened time and time and time again. And now we're in a situation where we're being told for the last couple of years, look forward to the future. We've got these young guys coming through. These are the guys that are going to turn our club around. And now, really, the first one that's come into grade and really shown that he's an NRL standard player really early in his career. And now there's talk about him leaving. And what that does to the fan base and what it does to me personally is you think all those promises about our future being these young guys, but now there's issues with the young guys. And there's rumours around other young guys in our club as well who may be looking to get out as well. And you hear that and the worry comes in that, yes, we're relying heavily on these young guys, but if these young guys don't want to stay here, we're in a world of trouble. And it just takes us back to where we were when the so-called three, the big four, walked out on the club.
But Eddie, in saying all of that, and Gary's right, but is this, like, if you think about it, right, he's been involved in every loss that we've been in and nobody's laying the blame on Galvin per se, but like, how do you allow this to be played out in the media like this? Like, isn't it just an indication of how classless or how devious and like, if you think about it, if his parents are involved, I know the manager doesn't have a great reputation, but like, why would you play this out in the media at this point? Because all it makes you do is look silly. Why couldn't they have just said, look, we want to have a meeting with you on Tuesday after the public holiday because we need to have a chat? Like, going to the media, I think it's a bad sign as to who he is being advised by.
Yeah, but it's just tactics 101 these days. If you're unhappy, especially under that manager, it's no surprise. But like, we actually hold the aces here for me with Galvin. There's nothing we can do about Steph because those clauses make him off contract at the end of the year, and he can go if he wants to. But we hold the aces here, and you said we've lost every game with him in it. But like, we were losing every game with Tedesco and that in 2013 and 14, or most games. Doesn't mean you want to ship him out. Like, we've just got to hold firm. And I actually am not, I'm not apoplectic about this because I have faith in Shane Richardson handling this.
Yeah, the big thing for me in this situation, and it goes back to what Richardson was kind of saying in that interview, is we have him for the next 2 years. We can upgrade him now. No one else can, even if they're getting in contact with his manager, no one else can really do anything about what he's getting paid until 2026. I know, 2027, I think it is. So no one can give him any more money than he's set to receive other than us. So we've got the next 2 seasons where we can say, look, we'll bump up your contract, we'll double it, and that has a real effect on what he's going to be earning in the next 2 years. The other option is he waits 3 years until he's off this contract that he's on and he can go to another club. That's why we have the power in this situation, because we're the only one who can financially make a difference to him right now. And we've got to take advantage of that. And that's why it's so important that we say you can have that upgrade, but the extension has to come along with it. But the worrying thing for me is Moses being involved. He was involved with the big four. He managed all 4 of those guys when we had issues in the past, and he's the one we're dealing with again. And he's caused multiple issues at multiple clubs. He caused issues at Brisbane. He caused issues at our club previously, and he's putting us in a position where it looks like he's trying to cause issues at our club once again.
Yeah, like I know you've got every right to try and have somebody who advocates for you for the best possible deal, but I think it's a worry instantly as soon as somebody selects somebody like him, because it is completely and entirely classless to handle it the way that it's been handled, especially when you take into account that nobody saw Lachlan Galvin playing this much first grade this year. The West Tigers didn't plan for Lachlan Galvin to have that 5'8" jersey every week. The West Tigers planned for Aiden Caesar and Jaden Sullivan and potentially Latu Fainu being, they were all, you would think that was the plan for 2024, and all of a sudden Galvin's came through. Now that doesn't mean that it's an excuse to not pay him what he deserves, but I think you've got to do it a little bit more class than that. You know, the West Tigers haven't hung him out to dry or anything. They've given him an opportunity. I think it's danger signs. I think it's warning signs if we're dealing with someone like this who allows people to have that influence over you. So I'm the little bit of the shine's gone off Galvin. I think he's got to man up, and he's got to be a little bit bigger here than what the behaviour has been over the last few days, Gary.
Look, I give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt in this situation. He's an 18-year-old kid. He's going to be looking to other people for advice in this situation. He probably didn't have a huge choice in who his manager was when that decision was made. So I will give him the benefit of the doubt that he's still a kid. It's very difficult in that situation where you're transitioning from basically doing what you've been told your entire life by your parents to making your own decisions. So I'm not going to tarnish him with that brush at this point in time, just because the guy's still a kid. He may be playing in the NRL, but he's still just a kid.
I get what you're saying, Joel. I saw Paul Gallen said it. He said, this kid should just pull his head in because, if he wasn't at the West Tigers, he wouldn't even be in first grade. Like, we're the club that gave him an opportunity as an 18-year-old to start in round one out of schoolboy football, and that's why his value is currently, a lot higher than what it would be perhaps if he was at another club. But, I think Paul Gallen's talking from a time when he was coming through and how 18-year-olds were back then, and they're certainly not like that now, and the managers are not like that now. So I just think it's the reality, and I really hope Tigers fans just sort of, I don't want to tell them how to think. They can think however they like, but I just think I'd caution against turning against a kid that's 18 when he's in that situation.
Yeah, look, it's not about. I absolutely agree with what you're saying, but you've got to be careful with who your people are. Like, if you have mercenaries, I don't think he's got enough runs on the board to be a mercenary. I think if you're somebody who's played for your country and you've won premierships, then you've got every right to throw your weight around. But if you're just starting out in your career and you're treating the club like this, I think it's a concern. But anyway, be that as it may, we'll see how it unfolds. There is some better news when we talk about the shredder firing up. It looks like the UK is going to be taking Naden and Sullivan off our hands. And there's also potentially a UK forward coming our way. We don't know who that is. Just before we discuss that, I'll ask you this, Gary. Richardson's been out of the country, we don't know exactly how long for. But
about 2 weeks, apparently.
It seems like as soon as the teacher went away, the kid started to play up. Does that feel like it to you?
Yeah, possibly. I think Richo being involved, just to jump back to Galvin for a minute, Richo being involved in dealing with Galvin and his manager, I think that probably gives the potential of someone who is that kind of authority figure to come in and say, look, you need to pull your head in a little bit. I think he could deal with that quite well. And that could be a case across the board. And some of the issues that we have had discipline-wise, we've had discipline issues all year. So it is something, if Benji can't address the discipline issues that we kind of have at the moment, then Shane Richardson definitely needs to get in there and do it, because there are major discipline issues in our club, and I don't know whether Richo being away for a couple of weeks is just the cause of it, because it's been there for a while now.
That's probably more the concern I have, Joel, and I'm sure we'll get to talking about Benji, but it's just I worry, and I've said it a couple of times this year. It's interesting now they're resting him this week. Apparently he's been playing with injections in a hand for the last 3 games, which I know is not unusual in the NRL, but I would say it's not common for 18-year-olds to be doing it every week. Obviously the situation for us is quite desperate, injuries and whatnot, but I just find it interesting now they're resting him this week when perhaps you could have rested him a few weeks ago. And
Caesar is back this week, though.
Yeah, but Sullivan's out.
Yeah, good point.
I just think that there's, and that's where I come back to Benji and I go, a rookie coach under pressure, desperate to get a win, and I just watched him last Friday, and that was the first time I thought, I'm a bit worried about this. Everything he said, it didn't look like he believed what he said, and that was the first time I've seen it. And he's the blowtorch is going to come on now, because despite the fact that we've got a half a state cup side running out, this is when you find out whether he sort of can make it as a coach. And it's not about getting wins every week; it's about keeping unity, and players wanting to be there. And if he can do that, that's a big challenge. and that'll be half a tick. But if that starts to fall apart and young players are off him or there's disharmony, then it could be a slippery slope.
One point I will make, it's classic West Tigers, isn't it? Because all of a sudden it looks like Appy Coruscant is going to play in the halves. We could have moved Appy to the halves a couple of weeks ago when we actually had a guy that's played a fair bit of first grade in Jake Simpkin. So we get rid of the experienced backup and all of a sudden move the hooker out of hooker and into the halves when we could have done that a couple of weeks ago. So that's sort of classic West Tigers. That's what we've been doing for a long time. Gary, you were going to make a point?
Well, in regards to that, I think there may be an effort to get Talon De Silva a little bit of game time as well. I think that's part of possible that move as well, is to get Talon.
Keep another young bloke happy, Gary, maybe. Quite
possibly. So I think that may be part of that move there, is to get him a little bit more game time. Look, it's a really hard situation for Benji, and I'm okay with us losing games and having a difficult period. Our roster is really poor. We have a lot of injuries. What I'm not okay with, he needs to get the discipline of the side under control. The stupid penalties, the sin binnings, all that needs to improve. The fake aggression some of our guys are showing out there, it's just not good enough, and we need to be better than that. We can't be the worst football team, worst roster in the comp, and then be the worst disciplined side as well. That's really important that he gets that sorted out. He has to get that sorted out. And the key thing for me, and you just said it, Eddie, is he has to have these young guys coming through on side. If they are not on board with the direction that we're going, that's when we have major issues. And I wouldn't contemplate moving Benji on at this point, as long as he has those young guys we got coming through on side. I don't overly care if a few of those older guys who, with the whispers of people being shopped around, I don't care if there's a little bit of unrest there, because we're talking about sending Naden and Sullivan here, and there's rumours about Bateman going elsewhere. And if that's got a few of those guys a little bit on hot coals, then that's not really a huge issue. And if that is causing a little bit of team disharmony at the moment, you can't really avoid that. You can't shop guys around and not have that impact the unity and how your team's playing together. But it's really crucial that those guys that we see as our long-term future of our club know that they're our long-term future of our club. They believe in the direction and they believe in the coaching structure. If that's not happening, then we have an issue that we've got to have a look at. So hopefully that's all sorted, and the changes that we're currently making with moving some players out and bringing some in, that's going to get us going in the right direction. But those young guys need to be on board.
If we're talking about ill discipline, like Caesar got 4 weeks, and I think he was unlucky to get the 4 weeks. I don't think that was something that came from ill discipline. Maybe poor technique, poor timing in that moment. But we're talking about 3 prime candidates. They've got the target painted on their back. Naden, Sullivan and Seyfarth. It's the same 3. And Bateman, when he was playing, you could put in that category as well. But they all keep getting picked. So I don't understand. Like, we've been seeing this coming. Why do we keep picking him? I mean, Naden did that bonehead move, and there he is, picked at 14 the next week.
The cupboard is fairly bare. There is not a lot, like our reserve grade side's running last. So it's really hard, especially, like, we've got Seyfarth playing in the second row, which I would never ever pick him in the second row. But when you have a look at what we've got available, there's not a lot of choice but to have him in that role. And really, Naden's the one that surprised me last week. I wouldn't have picked Naden last week. I don't care if I ever see him play football for us again. So I thought that one was quite an unusual sort of selection. But outside of that, I think picking those guys comes down to what you have available. Like you couldn't have dropped Sullivan in the last 3 weeks because there just isn't the depth there for that.
Yeah, I think Steve definitely said it on Friday. I thought it was an interesting thing. I can't remember the exact saying. Gary might remember, but I think he sort of made an analogy about, a school class. And if you've got a class where a lot of kids are undisciplined, sometimes that's a reflection on the teacher. And I actually thought that was an interesting point. And it sounds harsh again, but that's something that Benji, I said it during the game. I said discipline is coaching. And some of these acts that are going on is because, I don't know, it's because they don't respect the coach or they don't fear the consequences or just the environment they're in. But when it just keeps happening and happening and happening, and it's really like juvenile stuff, some of it, I think that's something that, like you guys said, Benji's got to fix that up. Even if we're not winning games, we can't be ending games with 11 and 12 men every time.
It goes back a little bit to what I remember when Terry Hill was the coach, where him and Gillespie, him and Langmack, sorry, they didn't seem to be very respected, or they didn't maybe take the job on as serious as maybe they could have, both a little bit inexperienced in that light. And our discipline in those days was terrible as well. The only thing I worry about Benji in terms of, I remember them saying it about a couple of other coaches that were really good players, like just that frustration that stuff that came easy to them is so difficult for players to execute out on the field. And that disconnect can come through in that way as well. But look, he shouldn't. The plan wasn't to have Benji coaching this year, was it? Like this year was supposed to be Sheen's. He was supposed to be doing the apprenticeship, but although we've tried to make the right decisions, albeit the people that made those decisions we didn't have a lot of faith in. Like, once again, we've managed to find ourselves in a catch-22 situation because we've got the most inexperienced coach in the game, coaching the most inexperienced team in the game, and he's a club legend. So you can't remove him at any point in the near future without it really, I think, bouncing back on us in a terrible way, in a dreadful way. So, and then it's not helped by the Fiji stuff, because the West Tigers are on holidays for 60 minutes on Friday night as well. Like, it's just classic West Tigers. I know some things are changing, but it's not changing fast enough as far as I'm concerned. Gary?
Look, I don't really have a concern with that Fiji trip. That doesn't really bother me at all, in taking a couple of days of break away. The one thing I will actually say I do have a problem with that's been reported in the last couple of days is that he's not getting out to New South Wales Cup games and he's not watching the junior games. And for me, that's a little bit of an issue that he does need to address. Like, if you're telling players what they need to work on in reserve grade when you're putting them down to play reserve grade, and I know you can watch it on video and I know you can do all that now, but the message it sends when you're not out there to see if they're implementing that, I think is huge. So that's something I would really like to see him actually improve and actually get out to those games. Perfect opportunity this weekend, because I think there's 3 games out at Leichhardt Oval this weekend, I believe. So hopefully he'll be out there early enough to actually watch the guys that he is putting back in reserve grade. I don't think we're in a situation where we move on from him. We're 10 weeks into the guy's career, or 12 weeks, whatever it is, into the guy's career. I think he needs to be given more time. But you're exactly right, Joel, about him being an inexperienced coach with an inexperienced roster. There needs to be more support put in around him. Having an inexperienced coaching team with him in assistant coaches isn't helping him. So we need to go out there, and it might not necessarily be someone with head coaching experience, but someone with a lot of experience as an assistant coach, or someone like, give Brad Arthur a call and see if he's willing to come and be an assistant coach at the West Tigers and help mentor Benji. But something needs to be done, because I don't think that experience in that roster is quite enough at the moment. I think that needs to be addressed and needs to be addressed. I did say a couple of weeks ago that it's probably not something we can address for this season, that we probably have to wait till next season, but I think it's something we do need to address now.
It's like you said, Joel, it's sort of like a catch-22, because no coach deserves to be considered to be sacked after the first 12 games of his career. I'd like to think any coach, no matter what profession you're in, deserves probably 18 months, 2 seasons, even in these days. But like, this is Shane Richardson's first 6 months, and there's no way in hell he would have put Benji Marshall in as his first coach for this inexperienced roster. So that's where you're in that situation where, people can say online, we've had 4 coaches in 2 years, so we can't have another one. But they were all choices from the old regime.
People online, I think I said that, Eddie.
Did you? Well, it wasn't actually a shot at you, Gary. There you go. It's a shot at you now. So if you did say that, Gary? Well, there were 4 coaches in 2 years from the old regime who made a bunch of disastrous decisions for this club. So if Shane Richardson, I don't think he's going to be afraid to make a decision if he thinks he's not up to it. And I don't know. I don't want to see that happen to a club legend, but I don't think he's going to say, well, this is, if he's seeing things behind the scenes and this, not going to reserve grade games, that's a bad look if you lost 9 in a row. Like, even I would think that coaching at a lower level of sort of cricket, I'd be thinking, if I'm not watching this team play 8 weeks in a row and they're losing, what are they going to be talking about me? So, and even the Fiji stuff, like, I know he's been consistent there and that messaging has been consistent and a holiday and a freshen up's good, but I mean, last year, Joel, it was 74-0 off the back of Fiji. This year it's 56-14. So perception is reality sometimes, unfortunately, with those things.
Well, I'll just make the point as somebody who's tried to have a career back when my kids were young. It was a career that took me away from home a fair bit. It was a time-consuming career, and it was very, very difficult to do. Now that they're 10 years older and they're in their late teens, it's like I can go here, I can go there, I can do whatever I want to do. Like, is head coaching the job for a man with a young family? I don't know about that because it's a time-consuming thing. You've got to get out to Lidcombe. You've got to get out and see those games because the role of the head coach is not to just send the first grade team out with a few instructions, but you're the head of the whole football program. Yeah, you're shaping the way the whole football operation runs on the field. So I'm very worried about that. I wasn't actually aware of that, Gary, but that does concern me.
Yeah, that side of it does definitely concern, but it's something that's easy to fix. Like, get out to those games and show that. I don't think it's a huge thing for him to fix, so I just think he should start doing that. The one thing I will say is the big criticism, and just going back to Eddie's point that he made, the big criticism we did have of the old board was the lack of sticking to a direction or sticking to a plan. And I know we've got new administration in there, but Richardson said himself tonight in his interview that when you have a plan in place that you're confident with, and he said he's confident in Benji Marshall as a coach, when you have a plan in place that you're confident with, then you don't change it just because you have a little bit of a downtime during that plan. The courage is to stick to that plan and see it through. And I know he didn't select Benji as coach, but everything he has said since he's come on board is that he's very supportive of Benji as coach and he's confident that he's the right coach for the job. So I don't see him changing that plan anytime soon, even though it wasn't the plan that he put in place.
Phil Gould made a good point. I know, we often don't like talking. I don't like Phil Gould particularly, but he knows a thing or two about, trying to rebuild football clubs. And he sort of said, and he was talking about the Tigers, he said, media, people like us, that they want, a quick fix. We want things to happen straight away, or we just want, just win this week. He said, just win this week, just win once or twice. And he said, it's very hard to, maintain a direction. And that's something that we haven't done in the past. We kept chopping and changing. So, I understand what Richardson's saying. That the thing I just put on top of that is it wasn't his plan to put Benji in. That's the kicker that I think, he'll assess. I don't think he'll make a change personally this year or start of next year, especially with the recruitment Benji's been able to do with Luai and Taruva. They're two really, really good signings. But if you start getting, Galvin wants to walk and Utica Manu walks out the door, et cetera, then you're subtracting again. So you start losing your wheels in motion.
But that's also why I think the supports need to be put in place around Benji. Like, you're not going to throw that whole plan out, but you need to support that plan. And I don't think the current coaching setup does enough to support a rookie coach with a young team. And the point that Gould was making, I thought it was really interesting as well, about the fans and the media not giving time for a club to build and going through that bad part where it's not going to get better. The issue with that for this club is that we've had 12 years of not being in the finals. It's a little bit easier when you're in a rebuild and you're playing semi-finals 2 or 3 years ago. That's a little bit easier for a fan base to stomach. But when you haven't seen finals football, since that Warriors game you spoke about earlier, Joel, in 2011, that was our last semi-final game. And to be still sitting here in 2024 waiting for that to happen and to have people like Phil Gould saying that you got to be patient and you got to work through that. And Richo's probably said it at some point as well, that it's going to take time. That's a really tough sell with a fan base that's in the situation that we are. And to be told, it could be another 2-3 years away before we're looking at finals football. How do you tell a fan base like ours that when we've been told that for the last 6-7 years by the previous administration that, we're building for this year, we'll clean up our salary cap and then we'll be able to make a difference. And they've been hollow promises. And why, as a fan base, do you believe that this rebuild's going to be any different to the previous rebuilds we have? So it's really difficult for this fan base to be patient. And I hope Shane Richardson gets that, because he's not talking to a fan base that is recently out of success and you're going to rebuild and get us back there. You're talking to a very disillusioned fan base that hasn't seen semi-finals for 12 years and has seen 3 semi-final appearances in the past 25 years. Like, it's 25 years.
Like Gary, like, he's got a not as big a drought, but Canterbury haven't made the finals in 7 years. And I think, like, we could have snuck into the finals in 2016, 2018, 2019, and we've been out the back door in 1 week.
Yeah.
And I think he's saying is when you arrive there, you want to be able to sustain it. So we could have easily come 8th twice or 3 times with some of those older sides, and we went real close. We came 9th, I reckon, 4 or 5 times in our history. So, like, Richardson's not going to start listening to fans. He's not going to start saying, I need to come 8th this next year because fans have got the shits. Like, that's
not at all, but how you sell that message has to change. It's not about changing what you're going to do. How you sell that message has to be done really well at our club, because it is a club that's in the situation that we are. And I speaking about Phil Gould and those comments after the Shane Richardson interview on 100% Footy, the interesting one for me is when he was speaking about Geraldo coming into the club and doing poorly last year. That he was always going to come in. It was always going to be a tough year. He knew it was going to be a tough year. Phil Gould tried to get him to stay at Penrith for an extra year and have Mick Potter do another year before Geraldo came over. Well, that's probably the situation we're in at the moment with Benji, where we're going through that year that he probably should have been shielded from, and that was the plan with having Tim Sheens do the role this year, but we jumped at Ghosts again and threw that plan out, and there may have been valid reasons to throw that plan out, but we'll never know. That was taken away, that chance to shield him for this extra year, and maybe this is the pain we have to go through to get an improvement next year. I hope it is. I'd love to be in a situation where we're sitting up near where the Dogs are sitting right now come this time next year. But I guess we just have to wait and see.
Geraldo had served an apprenticeship. He'd coached Penrith after they sacked Cleary. He'd been there as an assistant for a long time. That's very different. A couple of things with Benji when it comes to coaching. It's clear that he's trying to channel Wayne Bennett. But the thing is that, because I heard one of Bennett's old players say, I can't remember who it was, say, Bennett, he's not the kind of coach that knows the name of the reserve grade halfback. Yeah, like that sounds like, well, if Benji's not going out and worrying about who the guys are that are coming through. But that's all very well and good when you're Wayne Bennett and you've coached Queensland and you've won a couple of premierships and you've got a team that includes, 2 Walters, Langer, Ranoff and all the other guys that he had, back in those days, because that was the time that he was talking about. But you got to remember that Wayne Bennett served an apprenticeship under Don Furner at Canberra, and he coached in the Queensland Rugby League for years before, and he coached the Queensland Police side as well, I believe. He'd done an apprenticeship as well. What happens if you appoint Brad Arthur and Brad Arthur says, okay, Benji, I'll see you out at Lidcombe on Saturday, and Benji says, nah, sorry, I'm taking the kids to McDonald's. What Brad Arthur's like, what the hell? Well, I'll go. If you're going to take that job on, I'm sorry, but that just comes with the territory. And it's very hard to have you can't have the apprentice or the person that's in the one down position be the person that's more experienced. It just doesn't work unless that person is 75 years old and is on the, doing their last little hurrah before they retire. But if you've got someone that's Brad Arthur's age or Demetrio's age, it's just not going to work. And I'm worried. I'm very worried about it all. Not necessarily the results. I think we all knew we were all going to be in for a difficult season, and I think we've been mostly competitive. If you're fair, we've been okay in a lot of games. Discipline and the lack of class and that lack of size has let us down. But I'm a bit worried about some of the things that I'm seeing. And, rugby league and rugby league clubs, I don't think are things that change to meet your preferences. I think you've kind of got to change to meet what happens in the game. So we'll wait and see. I mean, you could go back. If you want to go back, you could look at Alan Jones, who came from that rugby union background, going back a long way. He had a lot of success as a rugby union coach, but he came into rugby league and he tried to revolutionise the way that Balmain played back in the day and didn't have the players. So, sometimes you just can't change the system. You just can't change what you've got to work with. And I think when you've got a young, inexperienced team, you've got to put the hours in and you've got to show that you're the man and you're the leader and you're up there. So we'll wait and see. Circling back around, Naden and Sullivan. Gary's happy for Naden to never play again, so that will open up another spot. Sullivan, it looks like we're going to get out of that deal, another bonehead deal from the past. And that's the other thing, Gary, is that, we always talk about the old admin. It's a free kick, I know. They had to keep changing strategic direction because they kept making the wrong decisions. So that's why they kept changing direction.
Yeah, look, there's nothing wrong with changing a direction when you need to. The problem is, if you're the person that put that direction in the first place, then you can't escape the fault because you're either in the wrong for putting it in or you're in the wrong for removing it. You can't win there.
Exactly. We haven't spoken very specifically about the Dragons game, but what happened with the Loch Ness Monster, with Matamua? Because he went off apparently after 20 minutes. We fell apart. He had a knee injury, and then he didn't have a knee injury, but he never came back on, Eddie.
Okay, I don't usually watch Channel 9, but I was watching this game on 9 because I'm getting so sick of Fox Sports and some of their commentators that I thought I'm going to watch this game on 9. And I don't know if I might have put it on mute because I was, that's the way I'm feeling about games at the moment. But they showed Matamua sitting down in the sheds because I know Gary on the chat said, why has Matamua gone off? And I know we fell apart quickly after that and he started the game well, but he was sitting in the sheds looking at his knee. So I just assumed he had an injury, but I haven't heard anything or seen anything reported about it.
He had a knee brace on today, so he's definitely injured that knee. Went out to the fan day today and, knee brace on today, so it's definitely a knee injury. He's not available next week. So I actually thought it was really disappointing because I thought we're starting to see some of that, and it was 15 minutes, so it's nothing really to write home about. But I thought he was opening up that attack really well for us on Friday night, and it was really disappointing when he went off. I thought he was a big catalyst of that really good start we had. So I can't take a break, I guess. Started to show a little bit of good form, and then 15 minutes later he's on the bench with an injured knee.
It looks like Alabalo is going to be out as well. He had the concussion from the tackle from Lomax, so we're going to be a man short there.
After that take he took and stepped on the sideline, I'm not too concerned.
Yeah, turn up at Leichhardt early, Joel. We might get a game on Saturday. The way you talk.
Yeah, that's true. Apparently, Appy's in the halves with Caesar, Talon De Silva potentially starting as hooker. So it's going to be another makeshift team. The Titans got pretty heavy loss on the weekend as well. But I'm always wary when we play the Titans. Do you guys feel the same way? I never feel confident playing them. They always seem to rise to a new level.
They got points in them, Joel. That's the one thing you can watch the Gold Coast. They're a fast side. They do some dumb things, but they could blow us away. And seriously, the side we're going to name, it's not named yet, but there's rumours out there about how many outs there are and if Appy's in the halves and whatnot. But it's the one side we might have a puncher's chance against because it's Leichhardt Oval and it's the Gold Coast. But, if they come and play their best footy, they'll tear us apart. The side we've got, it's just not first grade standard, the side we've got, unfortunately, at the moment.
Gary, if the optics of another loss and at Leichhardt, if it's a heavy loss, is not going to be good for the club.
To be honest, I don't think the optics around the club at the moment are very, very good anyway. A win's really the only thing that's going to take a little bit of that pressure off. It's hard to say it, but the mood that's around the club at the moment, it's hard to see it getting worse. But I guess if we go out there and we get pumped by the side that's running second last, then that's going to have some kind of effect on the club. The hard thing right now is you could see on the weekend that effort bubble had kind of burst. Now, we've got so long to go in this season, and if we can't stay in games through effort because that effort isn't what it was at the start of the year, then there could be some really ugly games coming up between now and then. And it's quite possible this weekend could be one of them.
Benji said in the post-match press conference, we have to fight our way out of it. It comes back to that old discussion that we've had at different times, about you use that word effort. I think it's a really important game that the guys show effort, Eddie, that they put in a good performance here. If not, I think then it's going to be a very, very ugly end of the year. I think it's our, for want of a better term, our grand final. I think this is such an important game.
I'll say it now. I don't think we're going to win a game for the rest of the year. That you might think that's reactionary or whatever, but I'm just looking at the trajectory of the worst roster in the competition that is currently injury ravaged, shopping players, blah, 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 blah. The whole works, okay? So this is probably one of the few chances they have. I know they have games like the Roosters coming up where they're just going to get absolutely pumped no matter who they put on the field. But this is one of the few. The only thing I'd be doing if I were Benji this week is I'd be challenging some of those senior players to be better. And there's not many of them there, but I'm looking at Stefano. I'm looking at Olam, who was terrible on Friday night.
Yep.
I'm looking at Appy, who, he's getting everyone's, loves Appy and loves his effort, but I don't know. He's missing a lot of tackles and we're overworking him. I don't think we're using him well, but I think that all those three have got to be better this week. There's not many good senior players in this team at the moment, and if they're your worst players on the field, you're in a hell of a lot of trouble. So the kids are going to sort of follow you. So guys like Olam, Appy, Steph really got a lift this week.
And I make the point as I make all the time. We've got 2 roster spots available. Manly can add a Simpkin in. Surely there's got to be a hard-running front rower somewhere in the world that wants to come and play half a season of football for the West Tigers. There has to be someone somewhere that can add something, because we're running out of troops, and it doesn't make any sense to me that we haven't added a player or two. So what's the point of having roster spots if surely, Gary, there has to be somebody out there that's playing reserve grade somewhere that could contribute something. One guy out of the how many hundreds of professional rugby league players are there in the world?
Yeah, look, I hope, and I have to be positive that at some point during this season that we'll have at least use one of those roster spots up. I think it's really crucial that a little bit of experience is brought into this squad. I would like to see a hard-running prop as well. I think that's really lacking in this side. The thing for this weekend, I think we'll have a couple of guys making their debut this weekend, so hopefully a little bit of positive energy coming from a couple of new guys being injected into the NRL might rub off on some of those senior players, because we need that effort, and we need, as Eddie was saying, we need those guys to be better this weekend. Hopefully we do get a signing in the next couple of weeks, but right now we're running with a pretty thin bare roster.
Marty Tapau's not wanted. He's looking for a home. Would you give him half a season, Eddie?
Oh, if he wants to play for a pie and a Coke, I'd consider it. I don't know, Joel. I think it makes sense what you're saying. If you got 2 roster spots to fill, but I suppose they're thinking, and I know Steve hates this attitude. The season's a complete write-off, but you've also got to be careful the damage you do with some of the flogging. So you've got to get people in there who can compete at an NRL level. And I don't want to keep going back to the Bulldogs, but I criticise some of their signings. But in hindsight, it's been a masterstroke, because they've put in a lot of these sort of utility journeymen, hard men, who, when you get a few injuries, they're not decimated, and they're teaching the younger players about week-to-week tough football, and we have the complete opposite of that. We have a really young roster, and some of our senior players are not doing the little things well. So, hard to be positive.
Or they're not available because they're injured, like Bateman and Papali and Clemmer.
What's really hard about bringing a player in mid-season, though, is doing it in a way that doesn't hurt next year and the year after. It's really hard to bring in a guy and say, look, you're going to play for the rest of this season, but that's it. That doesn't really happen very often in the NRL. Usually you're bringing in a guy who will come in, spend this year at the club, but also the following year or maybe the following 2 years. And that's what's got to be considered in this situation, that not only can they help us out this year, but they're not going to hold us back next year or the year after. And that's where it gets hard when you're bringing a guy into the squad mid-season, because it's not very often you can get a player just to come in to finish that one season.
Yeah, that's true. But I just look at a few other rosters and I see some guys, like Ben Murdoch-Masila is a perfect example. I know these are all ex-West Tigers players, but Nathan Brown, they're kind of somewhat wasted in the... So Cronulla's got a couple of props sitting there doing nothing that could be contributing. It's just sort of frustrating because it feels like so many other clubs have got excess and we're running on bare bones, and we haven't sort of started the season on bare bones. And now we've lost a few and we're really, really struggling. And I'm worried that if we do go through the rest of the year without a win and we keep getting flogged by 40 or 50 points, just how much damage that does to the young players and does to the brand, which is already, so damaged. But anyway, we'll wait and see what happens. Midweek pod coming up with Eddie. Yes? You're not self-excluding?
No, we'll punch another one out, Joel. I don't know. I know you're rarely available for midweek. Talking about the Loch Ness Monster, I think Declan's now the Loch Ness Monster because, I haven't seen him in weeks. Does he still watch games or follow the club, or is he, a South fan now or something?
Well, we haven't seen him since you mentioned the Loch Ness Monster. So maybe he got a little tear in his eye and he's gone back to Glasgow, maybe. Gone looking for the Loch Ness Monster.
I'm going to ask him to come on Wednesday night. And
I've heard he'll only go on pods you're not on, Eddie.
Well, I brought it up, Joel, the other week. I think we should be a bit like the Tigers. We've got to, protect people like me and you, and we've got to give us a rest every now and then from this disaster of a club. Get some of these fans.
You're saying you're the young guy coming through, Eddie?
Well, looking at the roster at the moment, I'm not far away from that. Declan is probably the youngest, but definitely the youngest. But yeah, I think Joel. People like Nick, I saw he made a nice post of Buzz Rothfield. I won't mention what it was, but Nick, I really liked that post he did to Buzz Rothfield after the game. So
yeah, maybe like the club, we need some mid-season injection of some extra talent, maybe.
I think so, and just to freshen things up, give us the odd rest. So if you want to come on, semi-regularly, hey, just throw us a shout out. I know Gary watches play until bloody December, the way he is. I'm ready.
Mate, I don't want an off season.
I'm ready.
I don't want an off season.
Well, Gary and Peter A are the same. It's masochism. It's all the pain gives him pleasure. I think that's what it must be.
Seriously, don't encourage Nick, Eddie. You'll have him on here every week.
I like Nick. He's a glass half empty sort of person.
Remember when we did that with Gary?
His glass is half empty and broken.
Even better.
And I'm starting to lose a little bit of optimism that we're going to see 3 wins in a row.
Yeah, Jordan's way off with that.
Yeah. What odds is he giving us for that?
He may have been talking about the NRLW.
Right. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Joel.
Thanks, boys.